In my videos, I talk a lot about breaking generational patterns and traumas. So, what does it really mean? And why is it so important? So, throughout my years, I have experienced a lot of patterns that have been programmed within myself, but also I have observed it in my surroundings. And I would like to share that insight and perspective with you. So, our behavior, it feels normal, right? It feels like a character that has been built throughout our years, and we call that our persona. We have our good points, and maybe we have points we can start working on, or that are maybe some improvement points, I would say, to keep it positive. And then we have our beliefs and our norms and values in life. But what if these are not our norms and values and beliefs in life? What if they have been passed on through generations? And it's normal to have been brought up in a family, and you have your beliefs, you have your norms and values. That's normal. But what if they are limiting us and limiting us as a society or a community, I would say? So I wanted to talk about this, that I have noticed that we all have certain self-limiting beliefs, and limiting beliefs about others as well can really be traced back to generations and generations of patterns that maybe one generation couldn't process and heal for themselves. So I have a beautiful example. A long time ago, you were a man or a woman that has been brought up in maybe a difficult life where you had to really work hard to get food on the table, and maybe a lot of people in the upper class look down on you. So you start to develop this sense of self-worth that is quite low, right? Because you're being treated like that. You create a sense that you will never be able to afford the things that the upper class has, right? That's this very simple example. And it can be a lot of different examples. Then you start finding someone, and you start a family with that person, and you start having kids. And because you have developed this limiting belief of yourself, that you have a low self-worth, and that will never change, you will never be able to afford the luxuries that the upper class maybe has without doing anything. Then that sense of self-worth, if that man or woman, and as a family, so that limiting self-belief will be shared with that family and will be given unconsciously onto the next generation, onto his or her children. And so then this cycle continues, because now the child that is being brought up with these limiting beliefs, even if they have the chance, a new chance to do it differently, to be open-minded for themselves, to take chances for themselves. Because every chance is a new opportunity. Every situation is a new opportunity. They will have created a veil over their eyes, which I talked about in my previous video, of those self-limiting beliefs that they have a low self-worth as well. And so that's a small example, and we have so many examples. And so we just keep on passing these limiting beliefs of ourselves onto the next generation. So it is harmful for ourselves to live in that self-limiting belief, because we can do so much, but because we have been passed on with this veil, with this perception of life and of yourself, you are now living that life falsely, actually. And it's a truth that is hard to hear, but it is a truth nonetheless. And so not only is it a self-limiting belief of yourself, you will also start to see others with that self-limiting belief. Because maybe if someone is in the upper class and they have treated maybe your parents or your grandparents wrongfully, then a new person in the upper class you will view as in a bad way. And maybe that's not the case. Or maybe an upper class person who has learned throughout the years to look down on certain people, or maybe people with different ideas and different perception, they will start to look down as well because they don't know any better. So it's just one example for upper class and lower class, but it can be anything. It can be people born from different cultures. They can both be loving people. But because of the separation that was created, because the belief of separation was already created throughout generations, maybe those both loving people will look down or negatively at each other purely because they are different, purely because they have their own self-beliefs of themselves. So another example is, normally if people treat you poorly, and maybe it's not their intention, but they are just not aware of it because it's a pattern and a behavioral pattern that has been passed down through generations. For example, if I have been brought up with the belief that I have to remain calm at all times, because my parents, or through generations, the parents were always busy and they just couldn't handle a child that was just themselves. They needed an obedient child. Then that obedient child grows up with a lack of knowledge about themselves, how to be fully in their own energy. They only know now how to be calm and actually have dimmed themselves. But how to express themselves, they don't know because they haven't been taught, because their parents weren't taught as well, because that behavioral pattern, that self-limiting belief was passed onto generations. So now that person that only knows how to stay calm, but not express themselves, when they encounter a person that does know how to express themselves, they either look up to that person, but start to feel bad about themselves and start to lower their self-worth, or start viewing themselves negatively. Or more commonly is that they will start to resent that person. Why? Maybe because they're too much, they will think. Maybe because they're too extravagant. Why are they overreacting? But maybe the truth is because they resent that person because they are not able to be their full selves and express themselves fully because they have not been taught. So there are many, many other behavioral patterns and that have been passed down onto generations that I think everyone is experiencing. It has been programmed. What I like to talk about is the behavioral patterns, generational patterns that have been passed down onto us, and we are not aware of it. And it harms ourselves, and it harms other people, and it harms us as a community and as a society. And society keeps enabling that. And so we are not being motivated to be ourselves fully because we're enabling this as a society. So I think it is very important to now start focusing on healing ourselves and become, step one, aware of these patterns within ourselves. And the first thing that I learned through meditation and mindfulness, started sitting with myself, and stories started to come up. Stories that created emotions within me, stories throughout my life that I was repeating in my head, and it was creating a veil over my eyes about myself, which was false, about maybe the way I viewed the world, which was false. And when I started to become aware of that falseness and the illusion, I started to become more and more aware of those patterns, and things started to click. Hey, maybe I am not that self-limit. Maybe I am not like that self-limiting belief that I was told and that I keep repeating. Maybe it's time to do it differently. Maybe it is time to break that generational cycle and start healing within myself what kept repeating throughout generations. And can you imagine if we all started healing these false generational patterns, that we get to become so much more beautiful individuals and unite together and become so lovingly towards each other, and not judging each other, but celebrating each other for how beautiful they are when they fully express themselves, how unique they are. And so I have started to share guided healing meditations to start sitting with yourself and start listening to the patterns or the thoughts and the tension and stories in our bodies that are not true anymore and that do not serve us anymore, so that we can start healing our body that is tired of these stories that keeps us in such an unhealthy state, that tells us that we are not worthy, that we need to do so much and overgive so much. And I like to focus on women because I like to share a woman's perspective on healing and on life. So how to go from this over-functioning, tired, self-limiting woman to sitting, listening, releasing all that does not serve us anymore into this powerful, loving, energetic, beautiful, loving woman that knows her worth, that is able to create from love, that is able to create from a state of power, from a state of calm, not of survival, but out of thriving and abundance. So if you are interested in this, then I encourage you to follow me, like this video, and join my feminine healing community. I discuss lots of these type of topics, how we can heal the mind and body through meditating, through mindfulness, through sharing these and talking about these types of topics, and sitting together through these gentle guided meditations that have helped me heal, and I would like to share that with you. So if this resonates with you, then I would love to hear from you in the comments and in my next video. Bye-bye.